Hello and welcome. Today we are in Manchester at the pilot site of EBENTO project in the United Kingdom, where innovative approaches to home retrofitting are being tested in a real community context. Today we have with us our partner Aldous Everard from Carbon Cube, who leads the pilot. Aldous, thank you very much for being with us today. How do you feel as you approach the final sprint of the EBENTO project?
Yeah, thanks for having me on. Yeah, it feels like we've had a very productive project, and it's really good to be finalising the last pieces of the project now to see where we can finish up.
So let's start with the basics to understand the context of your work here in Manchester. So can you introduce briefly yourself and your organization, and what was your role in the EBENTO project?
Yeah, sure. So my name's Aldous. I've been working at Carbon Co-op since the beginning of this project as project manager and on a certain amount of the project tasks as well. So Carbon Co-op has been providing a case study or a pilot study for the project. So we're working as a testing partner, and our function within the project has been to work as a community intermediary. So we're effectively working in many of the parts of an energy services company, where we're focusing on delivery of energy efficiency improvements for domestic properties around Manchester. But we're not just testing the technology, we're also looking at how we can support vulnerable households to access retrofit services, and also looking at the funding mechanisms to pay for those.
Okay, great. And can you briefly describe your pilot site, where it has been located, the main challenges it aimed to address?
Yeah, sure. So our pilot's based in the Levenshulme area in Manchester. We looked to do an area-based scheme there. So we carried out quite a lot of engagement around there. And the area itself is Victorian terraced houses, so they're built around the 1900s. And they're representative of a significant amount of the older buildings around the UK. So it's quite a significant demographic, really, that are living in these. And the primary challenge we found was in those properties is around heat loss and damp and mold in some of those properties. So we were really looking to address that through fabric upgrades primarily.
Yeah, so what makes the pilot particularly interesting is that builds on the existing retrofitting scheme and connecting innovation, right, with real and ongoing community action. So now let's talk about the people behind the project, because retrofit only works when communities are actively involved, right? So what type of users were involved in your pilot site? How many of them? And how did you engage them?
Yeah, okay. So we worked with a really diverse mix. We were interested in the lower income end of the scale, excuse me, but not those that were living in socially owned properties. So those that often fall through the net when it comes to retrofitting. So these are low to middle income people that are living in relatively small houses, old houses. We collaborated really closely with institutional and retrofit professional industry people as well. So we really brought people together, and Carbon Co-op, acted as very much as a hub to bring people together to make that the whole thing work, really.
I know the Carbon Group it's quite active in engaging, right, communities, energy communities. So can you give us some examples of these activities that you have run during the EBENTO pilot site in Manchester?
Yeah, sure. So initially we needed to find an area. So we looked around and we kind of located sort of various suitable areas, and then we we found community organizations within those areas that were already kind of engaged with the community, and found an area in which we already had kind of links with the community. And using those, we then set up various, went along to different events that were happening, and engaged the community through other forms of engagement that were already happening. And then as we engaged people more deeply into the project, we could then sort of set up our own workshops and participatory events. We did demonstrations of other properties that had been retrofitted around the city, to refine that group that we were engaging with. But then, going further into the process, we then linked into the local authority, and then brought together professionals as well in other sorts of more professional events. And then then coming through the process, we did demonstration events where we were demonstrating to professionals and other residents the work that we'd already done. And finally we had evaluation events as well. So it was a lot of different engagement events throughout the process.
Yeah, congratulations, by the way. So in projects like this, of course, engagement often goes beyond beyond participation. It's about creating a sense of ownership, right, within the community. Now let's move into the solutions themselves, where EBENTO really comes into play. So what EBENTO solutions or activities were implemented in your pilot sites? What are the main results or outcomes achieved? And if you can explain what worked particularly well in the Manchester pilot site.
So, we have, working with our sister organization, People Powered Retrofit, we evaluated the properties, and we got a kind of deep retrofit. They provide their own system for a one-stop shop, effectively, for showing the works that can be done, depending on the demographic and the property and their ability to pay, things like this. So on that basis, we decided to go for a deep fabric retrofit was appropriate. So we looked at insulation to the walls, external insulation on the walls. We looked at the insulation in the attic, so ceiling above ceiling insulation. Also replaced doors and windows on the properties, and replaced the ventilation system. And a few other more minor aspects, the air tightness and things like this. So that was the work that we did to retrofit the properties. But for EBENTO, we also installed environmental sensors, so that we could make a good performance-based evaluation of the retrofit works that we were doing. So we installed 35 environmental sensors across the 5 homes that were finally involved in the retrofit works. And they allowed us to continuously monitor several metrics within those homes. Primarily, they included temperature, relative humidity, carbon dioxide, but we also measured others, including volatile organic compounds and particulates as well. So we could get a really good comprehensive image of what we needed, and beyond what we needed for the evaluation for the project.
Interesting to see how digital tools or implementations and on-site realities need to align in projects like EBENTO. Looking beyond the project itself, so what is the main impact or legacy of EBENTO at your pilot site, and do you expect any long-term benefits or a continuation after the project ends?
Yeah, I suppose one of the most significant impacts for us was to gain knowledge and understanding about the complexity of the retrofit process and how that can be navigated, how one-stop shop platforms can be used and the potential limitations of those sometimes. We found in the project that the platform was very much best when used as a professional platform with an intermediary who could act as an interface between the data that was being presented and the use of that data and the householders themselves. And so I think this use from that we've established that we can use and we intend to keep using performance-based metrics in terms of the to evaluate the retrofits that we're involved with coordinating, but also that we need to be very that data that we derive from that needs to be really tailored very well for the householders. And one of the things that they said was that they really with the EBENTO platform, we developed a web-based platform which ran on a computer, but the feedback that we got was really that actually a mobile-based app with push notifications, that sort of thing, would be better for engagement, and that data that they receive from that was if it could be more simplified and to be tailored for them, then that would be easier for them to interact with. Now, obviously the next stage of testing for us is to see if we can see how these things can be developed, and we do have other work in which we've been testing interfaces with householders as well. So we're hoping that we can continue to develop those processes, and indeed we are actually testing those at the moment with different projects that we're working on. So yeah, the project has really helped us to develop our hardware and software capabilities for monitoring and evaluating retrofit works.
It sounds like the foundations are there for continued change will be well into the future. So congratulations. We are looking forward to seeing your next journey in retrofitting with the help of these EBENTO project solutions and demonstrations. So now let's bring the human perspective again. So what feedback did you receive from users? Is there any comment or reaction that stood out? I don't know if you can give us some feedbacks received from the users, the homeowners.
We did receive feedback that the one-stop shop interface was for home users was too technical and confusing for them to use, and that the web-based logins could be annoying. So this did lead to, we found that this led to them kind of disengaging over time, which obviously is always potentially an issue if people don't have that same perceived ongoing benefit. We found that physical site visits to the homes really generated the most positive engagement, and we also found that when residents were using the digital platform alongside the professionals, that was when they really engaged with it. That was when they really took something from it. Something else that stood out was that when we engaged with some credit unions and financial organizations, feedback that we got from them was that linking repayments to energy performance was too risky for them, and so this was a barrier which we came up against with the platform, and they preferred to have to keep their lending secure without taking on that additional risk that is involved with energy performance contracting.
Okay, yeah, very interesting. Because also, the challenges that they were facing also help us to improve our solution for sure. Every pilot brings valuable lessons. So what are the key lessons learned from your pilot side? Which best practices would you share with other projects or initiatives working on the same field?
I think there were a lot of lessons learned. As you mentioned, our focus can be on the technical side and on physically getting the delivering the data and making sure that the data is reliable and functional. But actually, one thing that we're very interested in at Carbon Co-op, and we really work a lot with, is about how communities, how data can work for communities and for the end users, and so tailoring that for those. I think one of the issues we found was around that we had hardware as well as software issues with integration into the platform, and that was a challenge which was difficult to overcome. But we did by the end of the project, we got a lot of good data monitoring through, but we did have issues along the way with Bluetooth connectivity and data upload issues. We also learned that one of the pillars of the platform was to use building information modeling data as the basis for the energy modeling for the participating households, and we found that it's actually for older buildings which have they've had a lot of different bits of work done to them at different times, and they're on a very small scale. It's not really practical to use the standard building information modeling case for those. And so we did, within the project, we did discuss things like potential AI tools which allow kind of ingestion of data and the ability to create building information modeling tools without necessarily needing to do the full survey on the building. And so that was a lesson learned. Finally, the energy performance contract itself is something which was is currently quite a barrier to certainly on small scale domestic properties, where you have a great complexity of work that needs to be done in order to make those performance enhancements. And so it is quite complex to attach those two, and it's difficult to necessarily make it financially stack up to be able to use that model. So I think while we are monitoring, and we are trying to attach energy performance as best we can, actually tying it into a contract at this stage is not something which is really possible, it seems.
Capturing these lessons learned is essential for improving future retrofit projects. So thank you for it. I would like to give the audience a bigger picture. So how the results of your pilot site contribute to a broader European priorities or policies? And to what extent can your solutions be replicated in other cities or regions in Europe or UK?
So I guess our results really demonstrated that digital platforms need to align with national regulations. And so in the UK, this means integration with the British standards, BS 40104, and that's the code of practice for domestic retrofit assessments. And also they need to, certainly in the UK, we're now transitioning from the energy performance certificates system, the EPCs, to a new system, which is a home energy model. And that's currently being worked on in the UK. But these are the sorts of things which need to be the platform needs to be compliant for in order for it to be used as a professional tool.
So yeah, so potential for replication, it's clearly a key part of the story here, right? Because we are looking for find a next step beyond the project. So for us, it's quite relevant what's happening next in each of our pilot sites. And finally, looking ahead, what are the next steps after EBENTO? And there are already any plans to scale, replicate, or future developments of the solutions?
We do intend to expand our area-based retrofit scheme, the method we're using for that, across Manchester, and we already have mechanisms in place to work on that. And for that, we want to secure lending models and contractual frameworks, which are kind of collaborative, as we have done with the scheme for EBENTO. Because what we found with the local credit unions, that they were prioritizing secure lending. Then we would look at using a blended financial approach rather than energy performance contracts, because we need to combine grant funding with what we have in Manchester, which are 0% interest loans, which can be secured against the property title. So we found this to be a really good mechanism. We also plan to continue to develop and expand our role as a community-focused intermediary, so that we can help a broader demographic to access the benefits of more comfortable and more healthy homes. So, I mean, if the platform can be developed to incorporate more rich and compliant dynamic maps, then that would be really useful for planning and demonstrating the benefits of those upgrades. And we're continuing to use the data-driven approach, where we monitor energy used and internal environmental variables in our evaluations, and for others' evaluations of our retrofit works as well.
This pilot already feels like an important step in a much longer journey. Congratulations for that. We are finalists in this interview. Thank you very much for sharing your experiences with us. The Manchester pilot site really shows how combining community engagement, technical expertise, and practical implementation can make retrofit more accessible and effective. Congratulations to everyone involved in the work being done in Manchester pilot sites. I think it's a stronger example of how local actions can support the wider energy transition. So congratulations, Aldous, also for your big effort in EBENTO. And thank you for watching, and stay tuned to discover more stories from EBENTO pilot sites across Europe. So thank you very much, Aldous, for this interview. It was a pleasure having you.
Thanks, Raquel.
Thank you very much. See you soon.